Okay, so this is the second part of the video where we're gonna go over these questions that are right here. So for these questions, the first one says, which two forces were present on the marble before it and the rubber band began moving? Hint, think force of gravity and the contact force. So what this question is asking you is, when the marble and the rubber band were just sitting on the table, I haven't started moving anything, I haven't done anything yet, they're just sitting there. What forces were on them? And I gave you a hint. Think force of gravity and the contact force. So if we're thinking about force of gravity would be pushing on top of the rubber band and the marble. That would be coming up to down. So if we think about opposing forces, we would need a force that would be pushing up on the marble and the rubber band. So what's the contact force? What are they sitting on that's pushing up on them? That would be the table. So what are the two forces present on the marble before it and the rubber band began moving? That would be the force of gravity pushing down and the contact force pushing up, the force of the table pushing up. So that's how you're going to answer question 1. And I'm going to really guide you through this, guys. Question 2. Did these two forces cause the marble to start moving? So did the force of gravity and did the contact force of the table cause the marble to start moving? Or did something that I did as the teacher cause the marble to start moving? Please make sure you answer that one as a complete sentence. Don't just put no. Put no because blah, blah, blah. Question 3. Which force caused the marble to begin moving? So when my hands were on the rubber band, I started to push on the marble and pull on the rubber band. And that got the marble into position. Then when I moved my hands away from the rubber band, the marble went flying in the opposite direction because of the force of the rubber band. So which force caused the marble to begin moving? The force of my hands and my fingers pulled it in one direction. When it began moving without me manipulating it, it was when the force of the rubber band pushed it in the other direction. And question 4, explain why the objects began to move. Write a single explanation that is good for both objects. Hint, think unbalanced forces. And for this one, I am going to type right into the assignment, and I want you to kind of stick with me on this. So, when the marble and the rubber band were sitting at the table, neither, how do you spell neither? Oh, that's right. Neither one was moving because the force of gravity and the force of the table were balanced. The force of gravity pushing down on the marble and rubber band was equal to the force of the table, which is the contact force, pushing up on the marble and rubber band. When the teacher moved the marble into the rubber band and pulled back, the forces were equal. When the teacher was moving the marble, the teacher's hands were stronger than the rubber band. So since I could move the rubber band, the force of my fingers was stronger than the force of the rubber band. When the teacher let go, the force of the rubber band was unbalanced. Nothing was pushing against the rubber band anymore. My fingers weren't pushing against it. The force of the rubber band was unbalanced and therefore pushed the marble in the direction the rubber band was moving. What happened was we had an unbalanced force of the rubber band to the marble. My fingers were stronger, and that's what was able to pull the rubber band back. But when I moved my fingers out of the way and the marble went flying forward, it was because the rubber band was the stronger force. It was unbalanced, nothing was pushing against it, and it was able to move. So just like you did in assignment 6, you are going to create a contact force table. You're going to use a plus sign when there was a contact force between the two objects, and a minus sign, a negative sign, when there was no contact force between the two objects. I've already put an X in the boxes where it's the same two lines. So you're going to go to the contact force table, and you're going to look at each row to each column. So for the first one, it would be marble to table. Does the marble have contact with the table? If it does, you'll put a plus sign. If it doesn't, you put a negative sign. Does the marble have contact with the hand? If it does, you put a plus sign. If it doesn't, you put a negative sign. Does the marble have contact with earth? Earth is representing force of gravity. So for earth, I want you to think force of gravity. Does it have contact with the force of gravity? If it does, you put a plus sign. If it doesn't, you put a minus. I want you to try this part as best as you can. I know these can sometimes be tricky, or you could get one or two wrong that you get stuck on. So I have an answer key down below it to kind of help guide you through it. When you're done, please turn it in on Google Classroom. Thanks, guys.